So do I start?
Anna will start.
Okay. Uh, so, good evening, all. I'm Anna. I'm a student of TIS Hyderabad, and I'm one of the co-conveners of 4th Bhagat Singh Memorial Organizing Committee, and I'm the president of Progressive Student Organization. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the 4th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture. It is an honor to welcome you all uh, to our event, and most importantly, today's speakers, Dr. Taimur Rahman and Prabir Purkaista. Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture is a series initiated by students of Tata Institute of Social Sciences um, to create an engagement with the legacy and politics of Bhagat Singh, and most importantly, to create a discourse around the social and political realities of contemporary times. This lecture series started in TIS Mumbai in 2018, organized by members of Progressive Student Forum, and later it expanded to all the like-minded students from TIS Mumbai. In this and this year, when we reach at the fourth episode of Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture, students across these campuses are now part of the organization. Uh, like students from Mumbai, Hyderabad, Tuljapur, Guwahati, all of them are part of the organization committee, and it's the first ever event organized by students of entire TIS campuses. This is one of the best academic events of TIS, and most importantly, it is an entirely student-run event. This year, as a part of the 4th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture, we had conducted several pilot events, national level essay writing competition, photography competition, visual art competition, and we have collaborated with Leftword for a book offer sale. We had conducted a literary reading and political studies circle on Bhagat Singh, open mic with the performance of Dastak from Delhi University and students of TIS. And that was a platform for people to voice their collective dissents, and a musical night with the performance of Logma, which is a band based in Gujarat, who works with the issues of peace, dignity, and democracy. Along with all this, we have also made an uh, archive and playlist of Bhagat Singh's life and politics, which we will be releasing soon in this session. Now we are moving to an important part of the lecture, which is the presentation of concept note. I'm inviting Bhavya Sudhir to present the concept note. He is the convener of Media and Publicity Committee of Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture, and he is a student from TIS Mumbai. Bhavya.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to read the concept note for the Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture 2022. Bhagat Singh, a beacon of emancipatory future. A martyr, a revolutionary, a beacon of the anti-colonial struggle, a powerful symbol giving hope to a billion, Bhagat Singh remains forever etched in the history and the collective consciousness of the progressive movements in the country. Even 90 years after his hanging by the British, his ideas, be it his prescient analysis of the threat posed by communalism or the emphasis on the need of a collective mass organization to lead the prolonged struggle to realize a socialist society, his ideas resonate today more so than ever. His idea of complete independence is as relevant today as it was then. Was the statement surrounding Bhagat Singh widely echoing during the historic farmers' protest, which successfully forced the Union government to revoke the neoliberal Farm Bill amendments. His life and work has come to be a tremendous source of inspiration and guidance for the resistance against oppression and exploitation. In the contemporary political climate of the country, when forces of communalism and obscurantism are seeking to distort history and no historical figure is free from being appropriated, it is important to carefully discuss and revive Bhagat Singh ideas, politics, and the vision for an independent India to guide us in our ongoing struggle against the fascist forces. The Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture is an effort from the TEST student community to engage discussions on how a just, equitable, and a freer future for all can be imagined and won. The lecture features those who examine our world, its past, present, and future through a critical and progressive eye. We invite students, faculty, researchers, journalists, activists, and all other who share the vision to join us for the fourth Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture on 1st March 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavya. Our lecture series has been featuring theoreticians and subject experts on significant themes. And for the very first Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture, we hosted Chaman Lal and Gopal Guru, and it was on the biography and student life of Bhagat Singh. We have organized the second Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture in the middle of anti-CAA and NRC protest. And the lecture was on the theme, The Idea of India. And the lecture was delivered by P. Sainath and Shamsul Islam. The third Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture was in the middle of farmers' protest, and the lecture was delivered by Hannan Mullah and Dr. Chris Moffat on the topic, Bhagat Singh in Post-Colonial India. This year, we are conducting our lecture on the theme, State and Religion, and the topic, the political economy of religious fundamentalism in South Asia. We are so happy to announce that we have the best speakers to speak on this topic. Bhagat Singh's revolutionary legacy need to be remembered in this recent full time, both in India and Pakistan. He fought most of his battle intellectual as well other in Lahore till he was hanged on the outskirts of Lahore city. Since intellectual inheritance is our collective memory and should not be divided by political boundaries. We are so happy to tell you that Dr. Taimur Rahman is here with us. I don't think an introduction is required for him. Dr. Taimur is an associate professor of political science at Lahore University of Management Sciences in Pakistan. And he's an accomplished musician and spokesperson of socialist progressive band Lal. He's a leading voice against religious fundamentalism in Pakistan and an internationally noted advocate of secularism in South Asia. We are so happy to have you with us. On behalf of the 4th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture Organizing Committee, I'm welcoming you, sir. Welcome, sir. Today's lecture will be chaired by Prabir Purkayastha. He's the editor-in-chief of NewsClick, which is one of the leading news portals in India. And he's also the vice chairperson of DigiPub News India Foundation, the national joint platform of digital news portals in India. He's a founding member of Delhi Science Forum. And most importantly, he is one of the senior journalists in India. As editor-in-chief of NewsClick, he was targeted by the state for his fearless journalism. He was a student activist and leader during the emergency, and he was targeted by the state. He has been fighting against the authoritarian states and continues to fight. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to welcome Prabir Purkayastha to the 4th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And a warm welcome to all of you who have joined us today. I will explain about the structure of today's event. Our event will be addressed by the chair, Prabir Purkayastha, and then we will move to Dr. Taimur Rahman. Then we will launch a Bhagat Singh Memorial Archive and playlist. After that, we will be moving to the question and answer session. The question and answer session will be moderated by the General Secretary of Progressive Student Forum, Fatima Sultana, and the Secretariat member of Progressive Student Forum, Gautam. Participants in the Zoom can put your questions in the chat box. And we are also going live from 18 Facebook pages of student, progressive, fraternal organizations and collectives. So if you're watching the session from the Facebook pages, any of these Facebook pages, You can put your questions in the Facebook comment box. Our volunteers will gather them from there. Primarily, we will be taking questions from Zoom, but if time permits, we will be taking some relevant questions from the Facebook comment sessions as well. Then we will move to the end of the session with the vote of thanks by the General Convener of 4th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture, Harshada Sagar. Now, I would like to invite Prabir Purkayastha. Over to you, sir.
I'm not going to, first is thank you very much for inviting me to chair the session. The role of the chair is to retire as quickly as possible. But when you become chairperson, that means everybody understands you are old and your inning is almost over. So I'm not going to stand between you and Taimur, who's much younger than me, who actually has more to say than I possibly could have. But just because I have been asked to say something, I'm going to inflict a small address on you as my prerogative as chairperson. Quickly, I would think that when we talk about the nation, and that's really what we are talking about today, how do you look at the nation politically? And if we look at that, then I think what Bhagat Singh embodied was that you have a nation which is independent of religion. I would not call it just that it was about religious fundamentalism, because interestingly enough, you cannot call the two protagonists of two different kinds of nationalisms that emerged at that point in South Asia. You take, for instance, Jinnah, or you take Savarkar, the two really personalities who contest what Indian nation should be. And therefore, you have a different concept of the nation coming, which is supposedly about religion, but it is really the protagonists, whether it is Savarkar or Mr. Jinnah, were not religious. They were not religious themselves. In fact, Savarkar said very clearly that he's an atheist and his Hindutva has nothing to do with Hinduism. Now, that's his statement. It's not what I'm attributing to him. And Jinnah, as you know, was not really a good believer. He did lots of things which would not square in with religion that he identified with. So both of them were talking about religious identity as the identity of the nation. So it was really not religion. It was not that when you talk about fundamentalism, you're really talking about, can I derive all the social code from religion? Now that to me is fundamentalism, that you go back to a code that you were given when the founders of the religion were there. And those are the codes we have to follow even today, because it was given to us, handed to us in some form by whoever was the propounder of the religion, or the propounders of the religion, as you might call, in terms of in Hinduism. So if we talk about this, then I have to disagree somewhat with the formulation you have. That is, when we talk about Islamic identity of the nation, what is essentially the Jamaat as a formation. When you look at brotherhood, the counterparts in Egypt, in Turkey, for example, other places, are these in fact fundamentalist organizations, or do they anchor their national identity with a certain kind of religious identity? And I think I would say that in both these cases, you're really talking about what otherwise could be called ethno-nationalism, that you identify to the certain ethnic identity. In this case, you anchor it not with an ethnic identity, but you anchor it with a certain religious identity. The religious identity should not be mistaken as fundamentalism. In fact, as Savarkar himself proposed, that he did not believe in Hindutva. So that is, Hinduism. That's his fundamental proposition, that the Hindu identity has to be built in order to be a strong nation. Now, this is the key issue. And I think this is where we have to look at Bhagat Singh's and this rising, who basically in similar times, how he was seeing the nation and the way these figures were seeing the nation. And he was saying that you can have identity which is nationalist, which is based on a scientific outlook, and which is free from exploitation. And that identity does not need a religious identity to anchor itself or an ethnic identity to anchor itself on. So this whole concept of what the nation is, in fact, is it can be built as on an anti-colonial basis. An anti-colonial basis would mean that then you are looking at the unity of larger sections of the Indian people, and that identity does not need either an ethnic or a religious identity to express itself. And that's why his whole argument, why he's an atheist, what kind of a nation did he want, how he anchored it on a socialist identity of a nation free from exploitation, all these things follow from the way that the national movement at that time, which was really at that time nascent, was looking at itself, that what is the nation that would emerge from British colonialism? When you free our country is British colonialism, what do we place in front of the people? So either religious identities, or we place in front of them an identity which is pan-Indian. And don't forget, Indian identity does not exist in that form in history. There's only twice or thrice you can talk of a large empire emerging in South Asia. So how do you express this identity? It was an anti-colonial identity that we need to build a national economy which would be free from exploitation of British capital and British colonialism. It's an anti-colonial identity based on the economy that would be there. And that's why Bhagat Singh's outlook about socialism, that it should be based on an idea that we don't have to exploit each other. It should be based on socialism. Therefore, if you see the whole outlook that Bhagat Singh places in his notebooks, in his writing, in what we know about what he was thinking, that is how he came close to Marxist. In fact, he declares himself to be a socialist and Marxist in jail. All of this is based on how the Indian national movement was responding to anti-colonial aspirations of the people and the different anti-colonial aspirations, including Gandhi, for example, who also is far more religious than, for example, Savarkar was. Clearly, he was religious, but he believed in the unity of the people against the British and did not espouse either a religious nationalism or an ethnic nationalism. And I think this is where the current dispensation that we have in India is not just Hindu, it's also the whole aspiration of Hindu, Hindi, Hindustan. This is in fact an aspiration trying to combine religious and ethnic nationalism together. And of course, this is something which was fundamental to what Savarkar preached, propagated, and what the RSS then really takes over and has managed right now through the BJP to capture political power in the country. Hopefully, not for too long. Hopefully, people will reject them. Hopefully, we'll get back to better times. And even, if we don't get back immediately to better times, I do not believe a nation can be built on exclusions and hatred of other communities. That way, you don't build a nation. And I do believe that this is not something which can last too long. A society built on hatred, built on empty slogans, not addressing the welfare needs of the people, these cannot last for too long. But yes, they can do enormous damage because hatred inflicts different kinds of wounds on society, different kinds of wounds on the psyche of the people. So their cover for the hyper-capitalist policies they're following is to divide the people using hate, turning people against each other, on minorities, targeting minorities, and not, of course, targeting the rich who are their allies. So I'm going to leave it over there because I think the real task here is for Taimur. This is much more his battlefield. Music to bring people together, and political science to explain what is it that we need to fight and how should we fight it. Over to Taimur.
Thank you very much, Prabir. I'm very grateful to you for that introduction, because it really sets the stage for what I'm going to say. And it's, let me just say to begin with, that it's wonderful to see you again, and we must meet each other as often as possible, even if it's online. I also would like to thank the Progressive Students Forum for inviting me to the 4th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture. I have wonderful memories of the Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Bombay, which I visited before the BJP came to power. Since the BJP has been in power, unfortunately, I haven't been able to get a visa, so I haven't visited India very much. But I had a wonderful time at that institute where I performed and I spoke, etc. I understand that this particular seminar is being organized by the same institute in Hyderabad, which is also wonderful. But it just brings back wonderful memories that I thought I'd share with you. So the subject that I've been asked to speak about is the political economy of religious fundamentalism in South Asia. I'm not going to spend too much time defining these terms, which is something that academics are very fond of doing. But I want to start this lecture by asking you a question, or rather by presenting to you a sort of paradox. When we look at European history, we get the impression that modernity automatically and inevitably eliminates or reduces the role of religion from the public life and even from the private life. If you look at, you pick up any book on modern philosophy or modern political thought even, they are all unanimous in saying that, that the salient feature of the modern world is the almost complete absence of religion in determining and shaping our lives. In particular, when you compare the modern world with the medieval world, let's say you go back 500 years or so, the contrast cannot be more stark. You can often see that contrast when you look at movies that are situated in the medieval world or in that particular period in history. Whether we are or are not supporters of science or reason, and I know that Prabir is, and I am too, and there's a huge assault on science, on reason, on rationality, not just by the solipsists of the past, that is by the religious establishment, which we saw in the instance of the trial of Galileo, the burning of Giordano Bruno, and so on. But there's now also a new assault by people who claim to be of a left-wing persuasion, I mean by that postmodernists, who challenge the view that objectivity is something that can be, that ought to even be a goal of science, and challenge the view that science is or can be objective. So wherever we stand on that question, we can nonetheless agree that religion now plays a negligible role in European intellectual thought. Whether people are getting married, whether they're deciding about which country to invade and which economy to destroy, whether they're looking at elections, whatever question is being looked at, religion does not play a very significant role in the European mind. I speak specifically about Europe and less so about the United States of America, where religion continues to play a slightly more important role. Not so much in academia, perhaps, but certainly in the Bible Belt and to some extent in politics. But you look at a country like France, look at a country like England or Germany, there's hardly any role that religion plays in the public life or in intellectual life specifically. So even by the time Nietzsche pronounced the death of God, this had become nearly incontestable, and that's over 100 years ago that he said that. For Nietzsche, the question moving forward was how to order our life given that his own civilization, that is European civilization, had done away with religion. So Nietzsche takes that as a given. Now that we've done away with religion, what do we do with our lives? How do we decide what is good and what is bad, and so on? I'm just giving that to you and putting that out as an example of where the European philosophical imagination was in the time of the 19th century. It had already reached that point. Karl Marx famously wrote that the advanced capitalist countries hold a mirror or create a world in the mirror of their own image. So if we hold that to be true, and I think you don't have to be a Marxist to believe that, even liberals believe that countries like India, Pakistan, or various African countries or Latin American countries are merely further behind in the historical evolution towards capitalism. And hence, the transformations that have already occurred in the context of Europe are inevitably going to occur in the context of countries like India, Pakistan, South Asia, etc. So if you adhere to that point of view, then it stands to reason that the third world must also undergo exactly this particular change, that religion should decrease in terms of its public and private role, that religion, therefore, in this perception, would be like an anachronism that has survived into the modern world. And it would be a thought process that will be inexorably undermined by the march of modernity. If you hold to that view, then let's term this view something. Let's give this a name. I like to call it unilinear evolutionism. So that means that history moves in a straight line and is always moving forward. So those who subscribe most fervently to this unilinear evolutionist view of world history find it extremely hard to explain the rise of religious fundamentalism in much of South Asia. Does this mean that South Asia is lapsing back into medievalism? Does this mean that history can and is reversing itself? Is it something exceptional about South Asia that the role of religion is not declining, but is playing a more and more influential and important role? Or maybe there's something exceptional about Europe. Why are our paths so different? And in India, in the academia in India, I recognize that this is one of the favorite questions amongst post-colonial authors about whether India will or will not follow the path of European historical development. But you and I can observe, anyone can observe that, let's take Pakistan, let's start with Pakistan. You can observe that in the 1970s, Pakistan was going along the path of what we would term loosely, broadly, Western modernization. Although created in the name of Muslim nationalism, which Prabir spoke about beautifully and eloquently, state and society were actually relatively secular in their orientation. This may come as a shock to many people, but this really was the case. Even when we had the early dictatorships of people like Ayub Khan, there were several reforms that the religious fundamentalist political parties like the Jamaat-e-Islami were completely opposed to. In fact, they went to jail many times, in particular over the Family Laws Ordinance, which I'll explain quickly, was an ordinance passed by Ayub Khan, which said that a Muslim married can have a second wife only and only if he gets a written permission from his first wife. And the fundamentalist parties were so incensed by that. They said, this is absolutely not Islamic. Islam does not say, according to them, that I need any written permission to marry to have a second wife. And hence, Maududi went to jail against Ayub Khan for that. So that tells you something about the orientation of the state and the orientation of religious fundamentalists in this particular period. So although Pakistan was created in the name of Muslim nationalism, as I said, state and society were still relatively secular. Pakistan even developed its own homegrown socialist, or you could say social democratic style movements and parties, etc. In the 1970s, believe it or not, the three largest political parties of Pakistan were all left of center, secular in their orientation. For example, you had the Awami League, which was the largest party in Pakistan, which was avowedly secular party. It claimed to be a socialist party. It was based in, of course, East Pakistan, which later became Bangladesh. You had the Pakistan People's Party, which was enormously popular in Punjab and Sindh. And thirdly, you had the National Awami Party, which was very popular in parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. All three of these parties were secular political parties, left of center political parties. All three claimed to be socialist, and their combined vote bank was absolutely enormous. It dominated all over Pakistan. That was Pakistan back then. These were secular in their politics and modernist in their outlook. Similarly, 1970s India had an image of itself as a non-aligned, secular country, democratic country, a progressive country, even a socialist country. Barring the brief interregnum of the Janata Party, Nehruvian secular socialism was completely dominant in India. And you can see its domination when you look at Bollywood, for instance. Bollywood churned out films in which the message of Hindu-Muslim unity was taken for granted. In fact, so many of the male heroes of Bollywood of that period and continuing all the way into the 80s, even into the 90s, were Muslims. You had the three Khans who were dominating, Shah Rukh Khan and Salman Khan, and who was the third one? I forget, Amir Khan, right? So this is it's quite a unique thing in my opinion. And you had, I think, the dominance of people like Sahir, etc., over the literary culture of Bollywood as well. It's quite interesting. And in those Bollywood movies, often the protagonist was an angry young man, and he was fighting the cruel capitalists and the landlords and, you know, the cruel gangsters that the landlords were supporting. And that's why I think in those years we grew up to love Amitabh Bachchan, because he was always the voice of the common man and the poor man in Namak Haram and other sort of films in which he was taking on the capitalists. So that was mainstream India. I did a song recently called Tu Hindu Banega Na Musalman Banega, Insan Ki Aulad Hai, Insan Banega. I took that from an Indian movie. And I mean, that message today in either India or Pakistan, you know, would be considered really, what do you call it? Anti-national or something. And although that was the dominant form of nationalism back in the day. The left, of course, had a massive and vibrant presence all across India in the arts and the scholarly community, but not only there, in politics, which, you know, in West Bengal, in Kerala, later on in Tripura, they went all the way up to 62 seats, became the third largest force, etc. at one time. So really quite phenomenal. Today, all of that, with the exception of the left, I'd say that's still pretty strong in India. But today, all of that idea of this kind of secular, so modernist sort of discourse of nationalism and left of center discourse seems like a distant memory. It used to happen a long time ago. Sometimes Nadeem Farooq Piracha, one of our big journalists, takes pictures of the 1950s and 60s and 70s and shares them on social media and says, look, this is how Pakistan used to be. And everybody's shocked. They're like, no, this is not how Pakistan, really? They're shocked by their own pictures, by looking at their own past. That's how much of a distance we have traveled from where we were in the 60s and 70s. So the contrast with contemporary India and Pakistan could not be more stark. In Pakistan today, the third largest political party is the Tehreek-e-Labbaik that has developed its mass base by supporting the murder of Salman Taseer. They have supported the blasphemy laws, and they have picked up, they have been picking on the embattled Ahmadi community. They haven't taken any cause of the workers and peasants or of the oppressed or economic problems of poor people, etc. None of that. They've been picking on very, very weak people and vulnerable communities. And they have been rewarded for that with mass support. That's the most shocking part. In India, as Prabir pointed out, Hindutva ideas that were once so far on the fringe of intellectual life of India that no one would even dream of taking them seriously have now come to dominate Indian political and intellectual life. It's absolutely shocking, especially for us in Pakistan, because we always just look to India and say, oh, you know, they're so progressive and look at us, etc. And now we're like, they're so, oh, wait a second, they're more like us than we thought they were. So it's kind of very ironic what has happened. The media landscape in particular has entirely been transformed. Religious politics has a huge, huge and vast appeal in both India and in Pakistan. How did this happen? And what does this say about South Asia's march to modernity along the lines of, you know, European Enlightenment? Have we reversed from modernity? Are we going backwards in time? How could this ever have happened? How are we so different from the Europeans that we're doing something that they're not doing? Those are the questions that I ask myself when I make these relatively casual observations. When we go deeper into this subject, in the first instance, it may be useful to examine and to understand that European history also did not follow a unilinear path in relation to religion or enlightenment. It was not the case that Europeans were really dumb and stupid and dogmatic and religious in the past. And over time, slowly, they became more scientific and rational, etc. Although many liberals paint it that way. In fact, there were many twists and turns, many advances and retreats. History does not proceed along a straight path. It meanders like a river. It changes course. It can even reverse itself before proceeding downhill once again. Take, for instance, the process through which the monopoly of the European Catholic Church was on the European mind was broken. It was broken in several big stages. Arguably, the first major blow to the dominance of the Catholic Church was struck by the Protestant Reformation, which broke out in Germany, thanks to Martin Luther and many others as well, Thomas Munzer, etc. But we sometimes forget, when we talk about the Reformation, we forget that the Reformation was, in fact, in a certain sense, defeated. Today, we look back at the Reformation and we say, oh, it's a success, because look at us now. The Catholic Church is no longer as powerful as it used to be. But in its own time, the Reformation was not successful. We, in fact, forget that the counter-Reformation of the Catholic Church was enormously successful in breaking apart or in defeating, especially from the most advanced areas of Europe, the hold of the Protestants, etc. That is, from Southern Europe. They were able to defeat most of the Protestant uprisings from Southern Europe. And Protestantism then basically went to the most backward areas of Europe, which were in the north of Europe, which were the least industrialized, least intellectual, least developed, and so on. In the most advanced part of Europe, therefore, the Reformation was in fact defeated, and its ideas only found refuge in the periphery of medieval Europe. That is, in the city of Amsterdam, for example, where Calvinism took a hold and created the first republic. And it was from Amsterdam, Calvinism moved in the 17th century into England. Those ideas moved and inspired and influenced the Cromwellian Revolution, which overthrew the king. But that too ended actually in a stalemate. First, of course, Cromwell was successful and eliminated Charles I. But then the Royalists were successful and they won back the throne. And finally, there was an agreement in 1688 called the Glorious Revolution, which was a compromise, which was struck between the forces that wanted to move forward, I would say, into the future, and those forces of the past. And that's why England continues to have a monarchy even today. It was only 200 years after the Protestant Reformation and the religious wars of Europe, which themselves lasted not 30 years, but almost 130 years. It was only 200 years after the Reformation, during the French Revolution, that the final and decisive blow was struck against the forces of royalism and the Catholic Church. In between each of these advances were major periods of retreat and going backwards, etc. What is even more significant is that the revolution of 1848 brought about change in the attitude and orientation of the newly emerging capitalist class towards the church and towards religion. The class that had championed the sciences and the scientists and rational thought in the field of politics, they were not necessarily themselves scientists, although sometimes they were, but they had certainly supported the rebellion of science against the church, was the class of these merchants that were now becoming capitalists. And they needed this new science for their industry and so on and so forth. But in 1848, there were big revolts across Europe against these particular classes, and these revolts frightened the capitalist class of Europe. And now the capitalist class of Europe, and all of this is written by Marx and Engels themselves, got so frightened of the working class revolution that they in fact joined up with the royalists and said, instead of revolting against the feudal nobility and the church, etc., they joined up with the church, they joined up with the royalists to suppress the workers' revolts. Now the former revolutionaries had turned into conservatives, and they allied with the church, with organized religion, in order to suppress the lower orders, quote unquote, the working classes. Antonio Gramsci may or may not have this in the back of this whole sketch in the back of his mind when he wrote his analysis of the rise of fascism in Italy. As you know, he was already in prison, and it's from the prison notebooks that we get his analysis. And it is a brilliant and penetrating analysis of what fascism really is. And really, it is the continuity of this particular thesis that I've already elaborated. What does Gramsci say about Italian fascism? What he says follows exactly the same motif. Fascism, Gramsci argued, was a conservative bourgeois reaction, capitalist reaction to the rising working class movement in Italy. To counter the labor movement, the capitalist class not only allied itself or allied themselves with the black shirts, who were basically strike breakers, but it also enlisted the help of the Catholic Church in the service of fighting the working class. It became conservative in its outlook. It enlisted all the powers of old Europe in order to fight the working class. It has taken, decades of the whitewashing of history to convince people that the Catholic Church played no role in the rise of fascism. In fact, the facts speak for themselves. That is not true. The Catholic Church was hand in glove with the fascist and Nazi takeover of Europe. Now, I want to say one very important thing that we need to consider. Religion itself has no history. We have the habit of talking about ideas as if ideas are people. We talk about socialism in the same way. We talk about liberalism in the same way. We talk about religion in the same way. Islam did this, and socialism did that, and Christianity did this. Of course, none of these ideas do anything at all. All ideologies are not people. They have no agency. They, in fact, have no history of their own. This is even an expression that Karl Marx uses. What appears to be the history of ideas, I've got Peter Watson sitting over here with his lovely book, Ideas, one of my favorite books. Otherwise, Peter Watson, I don't like too much. But this book, it's superb. And he's a really good historian of ideas. You might have come across his work on the modern mind, etc. So, he's speaking about the evolution of ideas, but it's not the ideas that are evolving. It's people who are evolving. And they're the ones that have these ideas. So what appears to be the history of ideas is in reality the history of people utilizing these or that or other ideas to fight their battles. So hence, to understand the contradiction between ideas, what we really need to understand is these particular battles. We must turn to these battles in order to understand the contradiction and therefore the development of ideas themselves, of religion and of ideologies and so on. We have to understand the contestation of people, what they stood for, what they fought for, and what they fought against each other for, over. Then you will understand why they had the ideas that they did and why they were competing and contesting with each other, and how that competition and contestation led to the development and evolution of those ideas. In 1997, I had the wonderful experience of visiting Bombay. Maybe it was 95, I can't remember. My cousin was getting married and I visited Bombay. It was the first time I came to India. It was really quite wonderful. At that time, I had already become a Marxist. I was very young, but I had become a Marxist. And I really wanted to learn about the struggle of the working class in Bombay. So I asked my friends, I wasn't in contact with communists at that time or anyone, but whoever I was in contact with them, asked them, I said, take me to working class areas of Bombay. I want to meet the trade unions. I want to meet the left activists, etc., etc. And they basically said to me, that's pretty much all finished now, Taimur. That's all done and over with. That used to be the case in the 70s, but it's finished. And I asked, why? How is it vanished? What happened? What happened to this massive working? I had heard about the 1947 Bombay strike amongst the sailors, and then the strike amongst the workers, which played a key role in liberating India and Pakistan, etc. And I wanted to learn much more about that. Of course, remnants of that still remain, but as a big movement, they told me that it had pretty much disappeared and vanished. And I asked them, I said, what's the reason for this? What has happened? They told me that the reason has to do with the rise of Hindutva politics, and in particular, the rise of Bal Thackeray. That Bal Thackeray, I was informed by my comrades and my friends, and later you can also read lots and lots of historical papers on this and academic papers on this. you can read about how Bombay businessmen supported the rise of Bal Thackeray and Hindutva politics in order mainly to undermine the labor movement of Bombay. And they completely bludgeoned and destroyed it. In my mind, hearing that, I immediately drew a parallel to Pakistan. In the 1970s, for instance, Pakistan had a huge, massive, vibrant labor movement. They could bring the whole country to a halt if they wanted to. They could fill the entire Mall Road, which is the main road in Lahore, with red flags. They could have, when they used to come out on May Day, they could be 100,000 people in their marches, etc. The working class as a whole supported, I would say, the politics of the People's Party. Of course, they also supported the National Awami Party. But on a scale of the whole of Pakistan, they were mainly allied with the PPP. I mean, we leftists like to say, no, they were with us, etc. There were sections that were with us, but on the whole, they were with the PPP. When the PPP came to power after Pakistan and East Pakistan went their separate ways after a brutal civil war, military operation, Bangladesh became independent. People's Party came to power here. 256 of the largest industries in Pakistan were nationalized. The public sector, and there were so many other changes. There was an uncompensated land reform. Land was taken away from these big, huge feudal lords. It was very little, it wasn't a lot. But the significant thing is that it was taken away without any compensation, and it was given free to landless peasants, etc. Agricultural debts were forgiven. Banks were nationalized. This is Pakistan we're talking about. Banks were nationalized. Insurance companies were nationalized. Educational institutions, mostly belonging to the Catholic Church, etc., were nationalized. And in fact, if you look at the total investment, public and private sector investment in Pakistan, if in the Ayub period or in the period immediately preceding Bhutto, if about 80% of the investment was private and 20% was public, now the relationship in the Bhutto period was exactly the reverse, the inverse. 80% of capital formation was occurring in the public sector, only about 20% was occurring in the private sector. The whole relationship had been reversed. The old Ayub elite had been completely defeated. These were the Adanjis and the Valaikas and the Kawasjis. Their industries had been taken away. Many of them went, the Sehgals, etc. Many of them went overnight from being billionaires to, to being upper middle class people, certainly not being billionaires anymore. So the old Ayub elite, this was an elite of about 22 odd families that Ayub Khan had pampered and brought up to be the leaders of industry in Pakistan. It was decimated completely. It was, in a certain sense, destroyed. And they had nothing that they could offer which could match the populist politics of a Bhashani, of a Wali Khan, or of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, or, of course, of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. They had nothing to offer which could contest against that mass appeal. So what did they do to reestablish their class rule, to reestablish themselves? They supported, they enabled, and they cheered for an Islamic military dictatorship of Ziaul Haq in Pakistan and Ziaur Rahman in Bangladesh. And that was the battering ram with which the populism of the Awami League and the populism of the People's Party could then be broken down. You needed the military as the decisive power that would put these class contradictions back where they belonged within the context of capitalism. And you needed the Islamic fundamentalists to propagate the ideas that all of this was necessary in order to build an Islamic society, and that we had gone too secular and we had become too modern, and there was something terribly wrong with what the PPP and the Awami League were doing, and so on and so forth. Naturally, the third major thing in that was the counter-revolution against the PDP government in Afghanistan, the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, the April Revolution. And this provided an enabling environment in which the Islamic military dictatorship of Zia could count on the financial support of the most powerful country in the world, that is the United States of America, which claimed to be liberal and secular and all of these things. Jimmy Carter was the president. He was from the Democratic Party in America. Many people mistakenly think that the Democratic Party is perhaps left of center and so on and so forth. He was in power. And yet the largest operation in the history of the CIA was launched in Carter's time, called Operation Cyclone. It ballooned to have billions of dollars, and it changed the very fabric of Afghanistan, the very fabric of Pakistan. Hence, we see that the struggle between labor and capital is really at the heart of the revival of religious fundamentalism in South Asia. This is really the key, that is the reason, the powder keg that results in the revival of religious fundamentalism. It does not signal the end of class politics, as many people would have us believe. They'd say, oh, that politics is no longer important. Now everybody's into religion and nationality and so on. It does not signal the end of class politics. Quite the contrary. It shows that it is precisely this class conflict that has given rise to religious fundamentalism as a form of fascist conservatism to beat down the lower orders, to suppress them, to get them to go down, so that the relation between capital and labor of old can be restored. Hence, just as in Europe, we saw that after 1848, the capitalist class became reactionary and began to support religious fundamentalism in order to suppress the labor movement. In much the same way, the very class that led the struggle for emancipation from colonialism was challenged by a vibrant labor movement, and its reaction to this challenge to its public and private power was to revive a kind of religious populism that was conservative, that was fascist in its political nature. It's no surprise, for example, that the biggest supporters of Modi's politics are what we call the corporates of India, who are supposed to be in touch with the globalized world and modernity and so on. But why are they resorting to this or supporting this kind of politics? To understand that, we have to understand the conflict between labor and capital. Its object, the object of religious fundamentalism, is that they act as the fascist shock troopers of capital, and the real object is the division of the working class into religious conflict and the suppression of trade unions and progressive politics as a whole. In conclusion, the apparent diversion of South Asia into the form of religious fundamentalism is not, in fact, a reversal of history. I mean, we can think about it in that terms. In a certain sense, it is. But on the contrary, it is also at the same time indicative of the fundamental structural contradiction sharpened by globalization between labor and capital. In other words, it actually very much fits what happened in Europe and across Europe when the bourgeoisie or the capitalist class began to react against their own working classes and resorted to supporting fascistic kind of movements to suppress the labor movement. Now, in conclusion, imagine, if you will, what Europe would have been like had the fascists and the Nazis won. Think about it. There's a wonderful serial, in fact, on Netflix, in which they have an imaginary world in which the Nazis win. What kind of a world what kind of Europe would exist then? Europe's liberal values would have been destroyed. Its secular foundations would have been undermined. Its democratic freedoms would have evaporated. Its progressive intellectual tradition would have been a distant memory of the past. Women would probably be forced to stay in the home and so on and so forth. It is not hard to imagine that had the fascists won, had the Nazis won, Europe would have entered into a dark age of exploitation and oppression. Now imagine, on the other hand, that didn't happen because the Soviet Union defeated Nazi Germany, and in fact, not only defeated Nazi Germany, but defeated pretty much the combined strength of fascist Europe, which was nearly all of Europe. Now imagine, if you will, a third world country trying to modernize and develop in the context of imperialism and neocolonialism, trying to catch up with scientific advances and other global intellectual developments. But where a country or a part of region of the world where the ruling class is terrified of the labor movement and therefore allies itself to the most advanced and developed countries in the world for the purpose not of inheriting all that scientific knowledge and progress and enlightenment and so on, but for the purpose of suppressing the labor movement via a conservative fascist counter-revolution. That is what we are experiencing today. The difference between Europe and this country, my country, is only that in Europe, fascism was defeated. In South Asia, what we are experiencing in the form of religious revivalism and fundamentalism is essentially a fascist movement that is ascendant and so far successful. The difference, therefore, between Europe and India-Pakistan is that in Europe, the fascists lost. In India-Pakistan, they have yet to be defeated. I end with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Taimur, for that brilliant presentation that you have given and the sweep with which you have dealt world history as well as bringing all of it down back to South Asia again. The only addition at some point you will have to make that how do you look at white supremacy and racism as the underpinning of imperialism of the West, that element we have to also consider, because let's not forget the entire colonial infrastructure that was built came from slavery, loot, plunder, and genocide. And it was coterminous with so-called rise of rational thought. And slavery, as well as white supremacy, are actually justified on the using even science as the basis. So it started by calling about the son of Ham, that drawn from the Bible. It then became quite scientific. So it was said that races are different, they're just lower than us. And it is based on the color of the skin that you can see which are superior, which are not. So we go somewhere in the middle. Taimur, of course, scales a little higher than us. But so I think that we do need to take that into account because racism, unfortunately, is quite secular. And therefore, you can have fascism, which is quote unquote secular as well. And we need to keep that in mind when you talk about Europe, particularly today. When you talk about white supremacy, not all Christian. A lot of Christian groups would be against that. But they really believe, and they believe in the supremacy of the white races. And Nazi Germany was very close to that. So whether we should talk about Nazi Germany being religious or secular is a question that in this context you have to then address. So I'm just leaving you with a future problem so that you can come and speak to us again on these issues. But I think we cannot talk about European history as they have painted themselves, how they became secular, more rational, the victory of enlightenment. Enlightenment goes hand in hand with genocide, slavery, and loot of all the countries. They have it is very rational to think of enslaving China through opium, which of course you grow in India. Okay, so all of this, I think we have to put in the picture, and we should therefore have a little digression one day out of how we look at the history of European, not thought, but European history as it was played out to be, not as they have written about it themselves. And therefore, if we don't do it quickly, another 30 years, they are all airbrushed out of European history. They've already started thinking that enlightenment, science, technology, enlightenment, and that's why the Industrial Revolution, and therefore they became superior. Forgetting there's a couple of hundreds of years of slavery, loot, genocide before Industrial Revolution takes place. So that is an important element that you have to focus on. I think that we should not take the European vision of themselves as the vision that the lens through which we should see them. I'm going to stop here. There are lots of questions for you. And as some of the people have already written, that it was an amazing lecture. It had a very wide sweep, and I hope that you'll widen it even further. With this, I'm going to turn it back to the hosts, and they could then take the question answer session forward.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Tanuj. This was a wonderful historical analysis. In fact, it's quite refreshing out of all the different kinds of analysis of where we are, why we are where we are. You know, having such sort of a historical and material bearing, because very often these things are discussed with no reference to history or the conditions that we worked with. So thank you for that, and especially that sort of characterization of rise of fundamentalism coming out of the counter-revolution to a rising labor movement, the shock troopers of capital, as you put it. Now we'll briefly have, we'll go live with our, we made a Bhagat Singh archive, which is a collection of the works by Bhagat Singh, about Bhagat Singh, across many different languages. So basically the idea is to put things in one sort of a repository where people can access it. We think it's very important to have it out there for anybody who wishes to learn, read, discuss Bhagat Singh. So our volunteers and our members have taken quite a bit of time in the last couple of months to put it together. And we also have a Bhagat Singh Memorial playlist, which is a collection of songs of resistance and protest songs from across the world, including Lal, definitely. Yes, I think we'll just sort of unveil it, and then by the time we sort of compile the questions, it should be over in about 30 seconds, and then we can go ahead with the question answers.
Bhavya, you can share this. Okay, you can stop sharing.
We have the links to these playlists and the archive in the chat box. And we sort of see it as an ongoing project where we will keep building on this. And all of you are welcome to send in your suggestions through our mail, through our social media, and we'll definitely take it in. Now let's go to the questions. I think first is from Aniket. His question is touching upon your thing about Bhutto. He's asking that, was Bhutto under pressure to pass anti-Ahmadi laws, or did he do it out of his own volition? Do you look at Bhutto as a champion of secular politics, or someone who took decisions that led to a series of regressive reforms in favor of hardline Islamists? So do you see Bhutto's role in the desecularization of Pakistan?
Thank you very much. Firstly, I'd like to address myself to Prabir's comments, which were excellent, as I expected. There is a beautiful, wonderful book that I would like to recommend to all the students here. I think probably Prabir has already read it. It's by an Italian Marxist intellectual. It's called Liberalism, A Counter History. It's written by Domenico Lusordo. It is a remarkable book because it makes exactly the argument that Prabir is making, which is that all the racism and colonialism, and the slavery has been airbrushed out of the history of the Enlightenment. And it needs to be brought back in order to understand the Enlightenment. Now, my purpose in this lecture was not to explain the Enlightenment as such. It was actually to build a framework in which we could see the rise of religious fundamentalism here. The framework being that you have to see the contradictions between labor and capital and how that impacts the development and evolution of ideas in any given society. So I didn't obviously speak about these aspects, but if I were to speak about the Enlightenment as a whole, I would certainly have that book as one of the chief books. There's also another really good book that I was reading just in fact yesterday, which is on conservatism, I think by Robin Corey. And the chapter on Hobbes was beautiful, Beautiful chapter on Hobbes. And you can look at all of these people, Hobbes, Locke, Kant, etc. When it comes to people like us, they are deeply, deeply racist, deeply racist. They do not consider that the brown-skinned or black-skinned person is even capable of rational thought. Even someone like John Stuart Mill, who is such a favorite of the liberals, he was part of the East India Company. So his daddy was too, and so was he. And, so these people were robbing India while they were writing about our history. So absolutely, I don't want to airbrush the Enlightenment and present it in the way that liberals do. My purpose only was to create that kind of framework through which we would then be able to examine what was going on over here and address some of the questions that are raised. Also, I think Prabir is quite right in pointing out how pseudoscience was used in the past. I wouldn't call it science, I'll call it pseudoscience. Bad science was used in the past to support ideas about, not just in the past, it's still being used to support racist ideas. Like, for example, that book which rightfully caused so much controversy called the Bell Curve, which argues that intelligence is genetic, is absolutely absurd. It's absolutely absurd because you cannot put intelligence, you cannot quantify intelligence on a linear scale. That's an absurd idea. You could be an incredible musician and be really bad at art, or really bad at science, or really bad at physics or some other field. And I could be a fantastic physician and I may not know how to play the saxophone. I mean, how would you compare? These two things are incommensurable. But anyway, so having said that, I completely agree with you, Prabir. And in fact, I wanted to do a series on the internet, a series of lectures on the dark side of liberalism, where I expose all of this. So I agree with you that we have to do this sooner before they brush this all out of the picture. Thank you so much for that comment. Nothing to disagree with you there on at all. Now to Anikit's question. No, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was personally not a bigot in that sense. He was a secular politician in the broader sense, but he was also a big populist. And he believed that he never took a strong stance where he felt that his popularity would be threatened in any particular way. And this was let me explain one very interesting fact to you. Why is it that the religious fundamentalists are so crazy about this question about the Ahmadis? After all, there's so many other minorities in Pakistan. Why not target them? Why the Ahmadis? What's the big deal with the Ahmadis after all? I mean, this is something that even Pakistani liberals don't often talk about. And it took me a while to understand this myself because being from a very, sort of progressive family, we don't think in those terms. Why the Ahmadis? That's the important question. If you ask a religious person, they will answer, well, because they don't believe in the finality of prophethood. There's been tons of sects in Islam's history that have deviated from that point of view. But the Ahmadis in particular, get a lot of the ire here. Why? The real answer is that actually the Ahmadis played a very important role in the early Muslim League. And the religious fundamentalist parties that became part of Pakistan were totally opposed to the Muslim League. And also, you may not know this, but totally opposed to the creation of Pakistan, which they thought was a sazish by secular Jinnah. It was a conspiracy by secular Jinnah to confuse the Muslims. You read Maududi in that period, he is vitriolically opposed to Jinnah. He says, this guy does not know anything about Islam. How can we follow him to make Pakistan, etc., etc.? It will not be Pakistan, it will be Palitistan, and so on. He uses the most, harsh rhetoric you can think of against Jinnah. So when Pakistan, however, was created, the Jamaat-e-Islami came here, and then they found that this could be a means through which they could blackmail and break down the Muslim League. They could accuse it of being soft on the Ahmadis, of having Ahmadis. And in particular, Zafrullah Khan was very close to Jinnah. And after Jinnah's death, it was likely, had this anti-Ahmadi agitation not begun, etc., that he would have been the Prime Minister of Pakistan. He was already the Foreign Minister, right? So Zafrullah Khan, Ahmadi, was going to be the Prime Minister of Pakistan, could have been the Prime Minister of Pakistan. So in 53, etc., they launched this agitation against the Ahmadis to get the Ahmadis out of the government, because the Ahmadis were actually one of the key communities that were very close to the Muslim League and the formation of Pakistan. So they needed to get them out of power. So they have been using this ever since the creation of Pakistan as a way to attack every government that they do not like. So for instance, they even attack the chief of army staff. If they find that the chief of army staff makes a policy that they don't like, what will they say? They'll start a rumor saying, do you know that the wife of the chief of army staff is actually an Ahmadi? And they start to use that. Then you will see in Pakistan, the chief of army staff, who is unafraid of everybody, right? He can bludgeon anybody. He's got the largest army, well, the 5th largest army in the world under his command, will start doing religious ceremonies in which he will try to prove that he's not pro-Ahmadi. You see? So this is a very easy way for the religious clergy to blackmail anybody. They tried to blackmail me several times in the same way. So for instance, they would, everybody knows, religiously what I am or am not. It's no public secret. I mean, it's no secret. It's quite public knowledge. But at one point they were accusing me of spreading Ahmadiyism, of all things. I mean, I don't even know the first things about Ahmadiyism. How would I spread it? But the point is, that's the method they use. So they use the same thing with Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And he buckled under the pressure, which he ought not to have, because by buckling under that pressure, he basically, violated what ought to be the fundamental right of every citizen of Pakistan, which is equality before the law. He declared them second-class citizens. And in fact, by doing so, he has created a major problem in the context of Pakistan, which is that citizenship will be defined by your religion, which we've been trying, the left, that is, progressive forces have been trying to fight from the first day, as Prabir also pointed out. So that's the answer. He himself didn't really care too much about Ahmadis and about these religious questions at all. But these religious lobbies have used this question to blackmail politicians in Pakistan over a long period of time. And they used it in the case of Bhutto, and Bhutto buckled under the pressure. In India, the communal forces have come to power through an electoral process, where in Pakistan, the role of the military cannot be overlooked. Absolutely correct. Does this distinction make a difference while analyzing the final outcome? I think it does to a certain extent, but the question is what would we conclude about this? Because although initially religious fundamentalism was introduced into Pakistan via the military, today it is no longer the case that it requires the military in order to continue existing. It has acquired a life of its own. To give you the example, the TTP has been fighting the military of Pakistan for many, many years. The religious fundamentalists themselves have also been fighting the military now for many, many years in Pakistan. And also you have organizations like the TLP, which have a momentum of their own, etc. So while it is true that the military supported these forces, and in particular, the military supported these forces after 1970. That's when the military and the fundamentalists came back together. And the reason why they came together was because the military needed somebody to fight the Awami League. And that's when the military and the Jamaat-e-Islami said, all right, let's fight the Awami League together. So that created that particular military mullah alliance, which lasted pretty much till, you could say, 9/11, when the United States then put pressure on the Pakistani military to break its alliance with people who the US said were attacking the US or were a threat to the US. And that caused a fracture between this historical bloc, reactionary bloc of the military and the mullahs. What's happened in India, though, I think I'm not as much of an expert on India, but if I were to take a ballpark sort of guess, is that it has much to do with what we call globalization. Pakistan was already very much open to globalization, foreign investment, and so on and so forth. But India had a very protectionist, Nehruvian, socialist kind of policy to change that entire framework in which India had operated since independence of self-sufficiency and a large public sector and so on. You needed that kind of a divisive politics of hate and bigotry that would focus all the attention away from imperialism as it exists today and focus all the attention on the imperialism that existed 1,000 years ago. So the imperialism of today is not important. Globalization and IMF and World Bank and what is happening today is unimportant. What the Muslims did in 1,000 years ago is important. That's the real problem. What happened 1,000 years ago. What's happening today is not the real problem anymore. That's what I think they needed in order to confuse people, and so that they could introduce their neoliberal reforms. But I will also say, of course, and Prabir will point out, but the neoliberal reforms actually started before the BJP came, and it started during the Congress period, which also indicates a sea shift in the attitude of the ruling class of India in favor of neoliberal globalization, which in turn, I think, led to this particular turn as well. But as I say, India is not my area of expertise. I could be getting this wrong, and I'd be happy to get your opinions in.
Hi. Now, there are some questions that are coming up from the Facebook feeds. So may I read one out? It seems really relevant. So now the question goes, there's often this line of thought that sees fundamentalism, I mean, especially in the Pakistan context, as merely a response to imperialism, and organizations or ideologies that represents this particular ideology in Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, are seen as some sort of leading the fight against imperialism. And this sort of view is also reflected not just in the members of the organization, but also in some who claim themselves to be left. How do you see this?
That is a bunch of nonsense that deserves to be thrown in the trash can. We deserve to only laugh at that point of view. Okay, that is so wrong, and only somebody who has no understanding of what's happened in the Muslim world over the last 40, 50 years during the Cold War would make that argument. Only somebody completely misinformed, some Western leftist sitting somewhere in some university who's never visited India, Pakistan, Egypt, or looked at what happened in Syria, etc., Libya, Iraq, etc., from any independent point of view would come to that conclusion. That is nonsense. Okay, religious fundament, what happened from the 1950s onwards in the Muslim world is that the Muslim world was swept in a wave of pan-Arab socialism under the influence of Gamal Nasser. You cannot underestimate what was going on because of Nasser in that period. One regime after another, one monarchy after another was overthrown in popular revolutions after the Free Officers movement came to power, and especially after they nationalized the Suez Canal and won in that conflict. It galvanized the Muslim masses to overthrow their kings and their shahs and their sultans and so on, and create republics and socialist democratic states. Nouri al-Said of Iraq was overthrown in 58. Syria experienced a revolution. Lebanon experienced a revolution, which then went into a long civil war because they wanted to crush people like Jumblat, Kamal Jumblat, etc. Arafat was allied with Nasser and the left, etc. The PLO was fighting the Israelis. And, I mean, come on! Where are you living? What history have you read? The whole Muslim world was divided between those who supported Nasser and those kinds of movements, and those who supported King Faisal and Saudi Arabia. That's what was going on. And the US imperialism was allied with the monarchies of the Muslim world. They were allied with the most reactionary Muslim regimes. They were allied with the, with the king of Jordan, etc., who was suppressing the Palestinians. They were allied with the monarchy of Saudi Arabia, etc., the most regressive monarchies. They were allied with Ziaul Haq in Pakistan, So, so anybody who thinks that has his, has really, I will laugh at that person, because what I would say is, please read some history. Read, read Fred Halliday, for example. Read any of these great authors, and you'll discover that you're really off on a rocker. Read Samir Amin, for example, the Egyptian Marxist, and what he writes about religious fundamentalism as the shock troopers of imperialism, Islamic fundamentalism in particular. That's totally wrong. Hamas itself, supported by Israel to undermine the PLO, they don't even deny it anymore. They said, yes, we did it. And, even the Israelis say, okay, yes, we did it. We thought at that time it would be a good idea. It's not even a secret anymore. So it's not, religious fundamentalism, Islamic fundamentalism, was not an anti-imperialist movement. It was a movement that supported imperialism. It was supported and funded by imperialism, and it was supported to suppress the actual anti-imperialist movement, which of course was Nasserite and Ba'athist and Bhutto's populism, and of course the left, the communist left, the PDPA, all sorts of, the Sudanese Communist Party, the Iraqi Communist Party. You had a galaxy of incredible left-wing intellectuals and parties, etc., all across the Muslim world that were defeated by these fascist forces. So that's the real history, not this rubbish history that is taught to us, which, you know, which has like a goldfish time span of 3 seconds. Oh, look at here. You know, there's a few bomb attacks. That means that they're anti-imperialists. Come on. I mean, really, seriously, that's not what's going on. Okay, thank you for the enlightened lecture. Will you please throw some light on how the recent mob lynching of Priyantra Kumari in Pakistan by the extremists of several murders like Asifa Bibi, Salman Taseer, Mashal Khan happened and not countered through the strong law, how it compromised with humanity? It's a disgrace to us and to Pakistan that such things have happened, my friend. And I went to Sialkot. We did a peace concert there. We're going to do another one in Multan, where similar things, etc., have occurred. And we are fighting up. We are doing our best. It's a disgrace to Pakistan that such things can happen, and we're totally opposed to it. But as far as the law and order is concerned, what law and order? Sorry to say, the police is the main purpose for which the police in India and Pakistan are used is to safeguard VIPs. That's the #1 priority of the police. And secondly, it's to keep the peace. So, quote unquote, the peace, right? That means that anytime there's a labor trouble or anytime there's a protest, etc., beat them up and put them in their place. But as far as these kinds of things, protection of the rights, democratic rights of individual citizens are concerned, the police there is not enough police. There is no police which is trained enough for this job. They don't realize their responsibility enough. They don't act fast enough. They don't prioritize it. When they get to that location, they don't fight hard enough. All of these problems exist. Many a times we've seen that the police pick up a vulnerable person like this to safeguard them, and sometimes they do manage to safeguard them, but at other times they buckle under the pressure and they give that person to the mob that then goes on and lynches that poor individual.
Sir,
yes.
Sir, we have questions on our Facebook pages also. So I'll read out one of the questions by Bushra. In the global south, we witness a sharp rise of liberal democracies. However, the eco-political landscape has shifted considerably, which tells us otherwise. What do you think of the functioning of these liberal democracies in the global south and how they have served the masses and its future?
All right, so this was the case in the 1990s when Samuel Huntington wrote, his famous book, The Third Wave of Democratization, that this idea was created that, all over the world, liberal democracies were sweeping. Actually, if you look at the data for the last 12 years, those who are liberals themselves claim that liberal democracies are vanishing in the global south. They are vanishing, and they are being and their place is being taken by hybrid authoritarian regimes, in which India and Pakistan are also on the list. Also on the list are Russia and China, which one may not agree with. But the point is that liberal democracies are actually neoliberal democracies in their economic orientation. And for that reason, where you have such growing fundamental inequality of wealth, you will also have growing fundamental inequality of power, social power. And in that case, no liberal democracy, or no democracy of any sort can survive the growing inequality that neoliberalism and the growing pressures that neoliberalism puts on a state like ours. And that's why you need Modi, you need Imran Khan, you need, or rather we don't need them, but neoliberalism needs them, because you can only safeguard the pressures that neoliberalism creates by this kind of illiberal, authoritarian, right-wing populist politics. The rise of right-wing populist politics is deeply connected to the pressures created by neoliberal globalization. So global South liberal democracies are failing, and they are failing for the very reason that they were brought into being in the first place, which was to support neoliberal globalization. But neoliberal globalization itself is destroying liberalism and liberal democracies.
We have one more. I think I'll just combine two questions and ask so that it's easier. It's from Megha. And how has militarism, fundamentalism, and patriarchy together affected the women in South Asia, which has considerably shaped the realities of women in the region? That's from Megha. And second is from Shruti, who's asking, the economic integration of South Asia is seen as having a huge potential. In this context, how can we what can be a possible regional framework of economic cooperation in trade and commerce that can insulate to some extent from the realities of neoliberalism? So one is on...
So can I get the first word? Because I didn't get in the first sentence, what did you say? Something about -- impacting patriarchy.
Yeah, sorry. Militarism and fundamentalism and patriarchy together, how do they sort of affect the women in these regions?
Okay, so Islamic fundamentalism, and I would say fundamentalism, religious fundamentalism in general, is the worst enemy of women's liberation. Okay, it's the main enemy of women's liberation. Women's position in society and status and freedoms and democratic freedoms in Pakistani society have reversed in every major field as and when religious fundamentalism has become strong. The stronger religious fundamentalism is, they're almost directly correlated. The weaker women's rights and status in society becomes. That is because religious fundamentalists believe that all the fundamental structural and ideological changes that have occurred as a consequence of capitalist modernity and the struggle against capitalism ought to be reversed. We ought to go back to that medieval lifestyle. Women ought to stay in the home. The public-private distinction should be very sharp. If women have to leave the privacy of their home, they should cover themselves up so that they clarify to the rest of the world that they are invisible, that they have no individuality, that they have no personality, because they've completely invisibilized their face. They have defaced themselves. That's a fundamental problem. Also, you see that although Islam nowhere prohibits the right of young people to fall in love and to get married out of their own choice, but religious fundamentalists see things very differently. They say, no, this is a question about families and about family values, and young people should not meet each other, see each other, talk to each other. They should sit separately, which of course is impossible to do in this world of Facebook and social media. People will be walking across on different sides of the streets and talking to each other on WhatsApp, on their phone, etc. In Saudi Arabia, that's how dating is occurring these days. But my point is that both neoliberalism, or all three, neoliberalism, fundamentalism, and militarism, obviously their principal targets and first and foremost targets are women. A person like me will still not experience such a diminishing of my freedoms given my gender if the religious fundamentalists come to power. But my wife will experience, and my daughters will experience an enormous decrease in their mobility, in their social power, in their status, in their position in society, and in the everyday freedoms that they can exercise with religious fundamentalism, neoliberalism, and militarism in power.
The second part about South Asian economic cooperation of a possible framework of what exists.
That's not even a debate. I mean, we've got to do that. I mean, we need that from you and you need that from us. And the sooner we get that on the road, the better. Even the Pakistan government right now of Imran Khan has said, oh, we're going to go for trade with India. And then, of course, you had one minister saying, no, we're not going to go for trade with India, etc. But it is a requirement. Pakistan, has a debt of billions of dollars, about $12 billion. That's why Imran Khan was sitting in Russia to try and get oil from the Russians so that the debt would come down. That's why he went to China before that, etc. Right? He's going all over the world trying to get some way to earn foreign exchange. Well, the solution is right here. The solution is you don't need to get foreign exchange. If we can just have good relations and open our borders with each other and trade with each other, you won't need so many dollars. We'll be able to trade with each other. We'll be able to get a lot of goodies from each other, exchange of ideas. And look, North Indian civilization is really one civilization. That's why I can watch Shah Rukh Khan movies and you can watch, you listen to Coke Studio and Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. If we were different civilizations, we would not be able to do that. We should not be able to talk to each other. I can't talk to Iranians because I don't understand Farsi, and they can't talk to me because they don't understand Urdu, but we talk to each other all the time. We are so well known to each other that when somebody from the outside comes and meets us, they're like, are you sure you're from two different countries? Because you even know each other's jokes. What's going on here? We have spent thousands of years together. And that, of course, is being obscured by religious fundamentalists in the world today. But that is an aberration of politics. It cannot stand the test of history and time. because civilizations, built along languages and culture and music and art and literature and poetry, that cannot change. Faiz will be loved in India. Kabir will be loved in Pakistan. You cannot change that no matter what you
do. We have one from Rituraj here, who's asking both Comrade Taimur and Comrade Kabir about how you would characterize your respective countries, in sort of characterize the nature of India currently and Pakistan.
Hey, we don't want to start a second lecture. So I think that one should be left for the future. You can have other topics as well, but that's a completely new ball game. Unless you want one-line answers, this is how we characterize it, which doesn't really satisfy anybody. So I would say long philosophical questions we should leave for the future. I have 2 or 3 for Taimur myself, which I'm also going to park there.
You know that I wrote an entire book on it. So the question is asking me to summarize my entire book in like one sentence. So my book is called The Class Structure of Pakistan. It's available through the Oxford University Press, but there's also a PDF copy on Library Genesis, which you can download for free. I didn't say that. You didn't hear me say that. And also, by the way, which is quite wonderful, it's just recently been translated into the Tamil language. So yay, if you speak Tamil or can read Tamil, go ahead and read it and give me your thoughts about it.
Great, definitely check it out. And LibGen is where we all go for all our resources. This question from Mohit. There are only a few clusters of dominant castes, especially in North India within the Hindu religion, that have more affinity with capitalist economic relationship with state. And apart from dominant caste Hindus, the elites from particular sects of the religion, including Christianity, Islam, with political power of the state. How effectively is this problem dealt with by the party programs of left of center and the Marxist parties in Pakistan?
Right, thank you.
What's your opinion of the caste class discourse in the contemporary Pakistan?
Thank you. Wonderful question. Again, my book is mainly on that, but can I also request, Gautam, if you could also send the text here, because sometimes it's difficult to hear you and I miss out very key words. So whenever you send a question, just send the text in the chat so I can also see it. I think that the question of caste is deeply important. And I have a very different view about caste than a lot of the Marxist intellectuals, perhaps in India and certainly in Pakistan. My view of castes is actually that castes, or at least the varnas, are essentially pre-capitalist classes. I think that they are the class. If you want to understand the class structure of ancient India, you've got to study the caste structure of ancient India. That's it. That's where the class structure is. Caste is pre-capitalist class. Now, many people who do caste politics don't like me for that. And I've had many debates with people who support Ambedkar's point of view and other points of views. And I'm happy to have those debates in the future as well. But I remain committed to the view that it is your caste or varna, I would say, because caste is a Portuguese term and it's quite inaccurately captures.
I think suddenly Taimur has frozen.
Yes, I think he's got a technical glitch.
Yeah. So till he finishes, till he comes back.
You please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I would say that I think, again, this is a topic for a new discussion, that how do you look at caste and politics? And let's not dump our problems on Taimur. I think we need to address this ourselves much more. Let me also say that this is not as absent from Pakistan as a lot of the Pakistan intellectuals seem to think, because there is also that part which we share on both sides of the border, that though they don't officially have caste, but they actually do consider caste in some way also. And I'm not going to talk about how Varna and caste are to be treated. I think this is really a much needs again an independent discussion, how to look at it. So I'm going to leave it at that, not because I want to duck the question, but I think it's going to take too long if I start a different discussion from what you've asked Taimur to do today. But I'm happy to do it any other day for you.
Yes, that's true. I mean, this is something that requires a lot of you know.
And I think I've spoken with Chris about it sometime also.
Yes. I was there. I remember that discussion we had. Do we have any news of Comrade Taimur? Is he coming back?
I'm contacting him. Just
okay. Let's just give him 2 minutes to see if he can get back to us.
And I'm back. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I got left out somehow.
So we are already pushing an hour and a half. Maybe one last question, and we can sort of wrap things up. And this is probably of personal interest or curiosity for a few of us, because in your speech you did sort of touch upon Maududi quite a bit. And it's not an ideology that is only in Pakistan. It is pervasive in Bangladesh, India also. So, but you probably are the most qualified to speak about it, having seen it firsthand upfront in power. So, how do you characterize the influence of Maududi throughout Pakistan and the current situation with relevance to that particular ideology? How have they sort of come about where they are currently?
All right. So first, Subin said something very interesting. He says, Didi Kosambi. Sorry, I think there's some sort of strange echo here. So first was the question, Didi Kosambi about caste and class. Yes, he does. He does in fact say that. But he has his own very strange sort of schema about the development of the modes of production in India, which I don't completely agree with or accept. But nonetheless, on this question or on specifically this particular point, I don't disagree with him. As far as the question of Maududi is concerned, I think he is the chief political ideologue that made the case that there was such a thing as an Islamic government, and that it should be brought into power and that it will solve all the problems. And I think for that reason, he ought to be taken very seriously as the main ideologue of Islamic fundamentalism and what I'm referring to as a conservative fascist kind of backlash to the labor movement. And it's very important to debunk his ideas for that reason. His influence has been very negative, it's been very reactionary, it's been very right-wing, and he is the chief ideologue of the right. And so we have to, at some level, clarify where we stand in relation to him, because that's the only way forward. As far as his ideas are concerned, his ideas are chiefly influential amongst students and amongst intellectuals. They're not so influential amongst workers, but that's what he targeted also. He targeted the intelligentsia of Pakistan. He wasn't really interested in targeting the working class or educating the working class. Neither is Jamaat very interested today in targeting the wide sections of the working class. They believe they are a middle class party, and that's who they target. And so, yes, he's the chief ideologue of the right. His influence is mainly amongst students, amongst the intelligentsia, but intellectually we cannot move forward without, in my opinion, first overcoming his ideas. Thank you.
Shall we close it now? If the organizers permit us? I think you're muted.
I think by this we are coming to the end of the lecture. We have
Prabir, would you want to add something as a closing remark?
Go ahead, Prabir.
Oh, no. I thought I had already shared more than my thoughts already. So I think I'm going to stop here. It's already 8:15. We have been here 1 hour, 45 minutes. And I think we lose people. We already have lost some. So I think it's time to close. And I think I should close it thanking the organizers for this opportunity to talk to young people. And particularly for me, to be opportunity to talk to young people is very, very important, as I'm sure Taimur is, though he has much more time than I have to pass on his ideas. So it's really a pleasure for me to talk to you. And Taimur for covering a huge canvas. I mean, he's really gone all around the world and across centuries. And it's a really, really a very, very wide canvas built upon, and also touched upon and not built on it superficially with a great deal of depth. So thanks, Taimur, for educating all of us, and hope to hear from you more, and hope that I can invite you also for other things, including NewsClick and my young friends, for giving an opportunity to us to talk to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. By this, I'll invite Harshada. She's the general convener of organizing committee of 4th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture. But with her speech, we'll close the ceremony.
Thank you. Just before the closing comments, let me also express my gratitude and thanks, not just to Prabir, but to the Progressive Students Forum and to TISS and to all the young people that are in the panel and in the attendees and listening on Facebook. Thank you so much. One day we will have peace in the world and we will have a world in which we will not have exploitation and we will not have oppression and we will not have patriarchy and we will not have imperialism. And you are the generation and you are the people that are going to make that happen. And I am with you. Thank you so much.
Harshada, you may go.
Now we'll have a vote of thanks, sort of an ending comment by Harshada, who's a general convener of the Bhagat Singh lecture. So go ahead, Harshada.
Thank you. Thank you, Gautam and Fatima. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, so we've now reached the end of the session, and I, Harshada Zargar, the General Convener of the 4th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture, I'm pleased to be presenting the vote of thanks on behalf of the organizing committee. We present our heartfelt gratitude to the speaker for the day, Dr. Taimur Rahman, for sharing with us a commendable analysis of the political economy and history of religious fundamentalism in South Asia and beyond, drawing interesting parallels between different parts of the world, also highlighting the need to transcend geopolitical boundaries for a united and organized struggle against imperialism and religious fundamentalism that he pointed out go hand in hand to suppress the working class movements across the world. We also thank our chair, Mr. Prabir Purkayast, for setting the tone of the discussion by highlighting the massive limitation and dangers of placing religion as an identity for nation building, and also for shedding light on Bhagat Singh's vision of nation building along socialistic lines. We thank and congratulate both the guests for sharing their knowledge and experience on the extremely critical issue of religious fundamentalism, which is increasingly infesting the secular democratic ethos of South Asia and the world at large. The recent outrage over hijab-wearing schoolgirls in Karnataka in itself is a testament to the importance of these discussions in the present day. In such times, when you come here to speak, discuss, and answer some of the questions raised by concerned individuals, it gives us direction to strive for a better tomorrow. Thank you so much. Next, we would like to thank the audience for their patient hearing and thought-provoking questions during the session. We would also like to thank you for the constant engagement and support on our social media handles across all our events, competitions, and initiatives. Your participation and engagement has not only made this event a grand success, but has also motivated us to create bigger and better platforms for such discussions. We would also like to thank all the performance organizations and collectives who had collaborated with us for the 4th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture. A special thanks to Loknath and Dastak for bracing our cultural events with their melodious renditions, Leftward Books for a special offer in collaboration with BSML, and all the organizations streaming the lecture live through their FB pages. The lecture is currently being streamed through 18 Facebook pages, which include the Progressive Students Forum, TIS Mumbai, Progressive Students Organization, TIS Hyderabad, Students Federation of India, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, SFI Hyderabad Central University, SFI Delhi University, SFI Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi, SFI Ambedkar University, Delhi, SFI Presidency University, Kolkata, SFI Kerala University Campus, Thiruvananthapuram, SFI Central University of Gujarat, Chintabar IIT Madras, Comrade, Bengaluru Collective, Pune Collective, Anveshan, Govind Pansare, and the Indie Journal. We thank and applaud your effort in amplifying our voices of resistance and strengthening our united battle against religious fundamentalism and all forms, shapes, and colors of oppression. Lastly, and very importantly, I congratulate and thank the members of the Progressive Students Forum, this Progressive Students Organization Hyderabad, and the larger student community at TIS for organizing this lecture with so much enthusiasm, vigor, and hard work, despite the limitations put in by the pandemic and the online mode of education. This lecture has become possible due to the organized effort of the committee working enthusiastically under subcommittees such as media and publicity, research and content, pilot events, finance and merchandise, and logistics and technical. A sincere thanks to all the subcommittee conveners for their leadership and all the subcommittee members for their contributions. It is today that our month-long efforts see a fruitful end. As we conclude the 4th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture, we are determined to see all the people present here in the 5th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture, discussing another critical issue, asking another pertinent question, and in doing so, upholding and celebrating the ideas and legacy of Bhagat Singh. Till then, stay tuned on our social media handles, where we will be announcing the results of the various competitions that we have conducted as a part of the lecture. Also, listen to the BSML playlist on Spotify and read more about Bhagat Singh from the BSML archive. Until next time, Inqilab Zindabad.